and welcome to our latest and greatest episode of Better Together Arizona. I am your host, Angela Hughey. I am super excited for today's conversation. We are approaching Statehood Day in Arizona, which is known as Valentine's Day to the rest of the world, but it's the day that those of us that live in the great state of Arizona get to say that we love our state. And as we work towards Statehood Day, I thought it was really important for us to sit down and have a conversation with Dr. Amanda Burke. Dr. Burke is the Executive Vice President of the Center for the Future of Arizona. Her work focuses on innovation and systemic change that will advance the priorities of Arizonans and the long-term future success of the state. She's responsible for the organization's strategy, operations, and program leadership, including the Center for the Future of Arizona's statewide initiatives in the areas of education, workforce, and civic engagement. Very important areas. So happy to have you with us, Amanda. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Angela, thank you so much for inviting me in for this conversation. I am really looking forward to it, and I'm thrilled that we're celebrating Arizona's birthday together.
Right? We need to celebrate Arizona's birthday, talk about why we love Arizona, and then also, obviously, the work that we have to do ahead. So for folks that maybe don't know that much about you or the center, tell us all a little bit about the great work you're doing.
Oh, great. Well, thank you. Well, I am Amanda Burke. I am really pleased to serve as the Executive Vice President of the Center for the Future of Arizona. I'm happy to share just a little bit about myself.
Sure.
I have lived in Arizona for 20 years. I'm so
that makes
proud.
you a native.
And my mom grew up in Arizona. My mom grew up in Tucson. So I grew up in Texas, but I have ties, here to Arizona. But moved here 20 years ago. And what has really made the state home for me is the fact that it's a young state. Mm-hmm. I love the fact that we're just celebrating 113 years. We're one of the youngest states, which means that we are still writing that story of our future. And what connects me here are people, the place, and possibilities. That's been on my mind a lot. And I moved here. I'm here with my husband. I have 2 little boys. Mm. I care about the future success of the state and generations to come.
Home, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm with you. I'm not a native, although we've been here for just so many years. My parents' hobby was Arabian horses, and so we would come out in the 80s and go to the big shows and sales, and they just fell in love with, I think, the opportunity that Arizona presented. And I'm with you. It's the people, it's the place, and it's the fact that we have not fully written our story yet that makes Arizona such an attractive place to want to raise your family and I think invest in, right?
Yeah.
And in the future of Arizona. That's what we're all doing together, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
So before we really dive in, I thought it would be kind of good to just kind of set the table and talk about civic health and what is civic health, because I'm not sure everyone understands civic health.
Yes. I'm thrilled to talk about civic health. It really is kind of the fundamental underpinning of how we come together to define problems and solve them together. Before I delve into that, though, maybe it would be helpful if I just share a little bit about Center for the Future of Arizona.
Absolutely.
I talked about myself, but in terms of the organization, we are a statewide nonpartisan organization that is truly mission-driven. And our mission is to bring Arizonans together to create a stronger and brighter future for the state. So you can see right there that tie to civic health. And the way that we do that is by listening to Arizonans, sharing trusted data about what Arizonans care about and what they want for the future, for their communities, for the state as a whole. Get those big issues into public discussion, and then importantly, work with communities and with partners to solve those public problems. And all of this is in service of a data-based vision of what Arizonans have said they want for the future, which we call the Arizona we want. And we do that work through public opinion survey research, through sharing data, and through programs and initiatives in education, workforce, and civic engagement. And so you asked me, what is civic health?
Yeah.
It's one of those terms that I think people feel like, kind of know what that is, but I don't really. Civic health is, as I shared, it is how we come together to define and solve public problems. It's the way in which we engage with one another. It's how we participate in communities. It's how we build trust in one another, in our elected leaders, in our institutions. And often I think when people hear the word civic, they may think about history or they may think about voting. And yes, that is part of it, but it's so much more beyond the ballot box.
Well, I think it's all the work that has to be done in between every time we're going to the ballot box, right? Like
yes.
we need to come together as a community, right? And within all of the different communities throughout Arizona, really to determine what our future is, right? And that's what I'm hearing you say civic health is
yes.
It's all the ways that we engage through data, through connectivity, through coming together and building trust and having the important, uncomfortable conversations that we need to have to be solutions based,
yep.
so that we can create a sustainable Arizona for everyone.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, I was going to ask you why civic health mattered, but it seems pretty clear to me that if we don't have good civic health, we're really putting our state's future at risk.
Yes. And there's actually been a lot of research done nationally, internationally on civic health. And at CFA, we talk about it. It's both an ends and a means. Okay. You know, civic health, if you have strong civic health, communities have stronger economies. If you have strong civic health, there's a tight correlation between actual health outcomes. If you have strong civic health, government is more responsive. So it matters because it is the way in which we get things done, and it matters for the outcomes of so many of the big issues that are important to so many of us.
So you've said strong civic health. Where are we with Arizona civic health, and how do you measure civic health in a community?
Yes. Well, we're fortunate in that there are actually ways that you can measure civic health. So that's the good news. And at Center for the Future of Arizona, we really believe in that adage of what gets measured matters, where you measure the things that matter. So it was really important to us to have ways of making this concrete. We're fortunate in that we have a lot of strong national collaborations and partnerships. One of those is with a national nonprofit called the National Conference on Citizenship, NCOC for short. And they've developed a civic health index. And it includes indicators like voting, volunteering, discussing politics with family and friends, which I know many of us are doing right now and have been doing in recent months leading up to the recent presidential election. Confidence in institutions, contacting public officials. If you want your voice to be heard, how often do you reach out and actually ask, an elected leader to listen to your story and to bring that viewpoint forward, as well as things like belonging and spending times with neighbors. So all of those indicators are ways that we can measure civic health. And we at Center for the Future of Arizona have created what we call progress meters.
Okay.
These are tools, dynamic database tools that anyone can come onto our website and engage with. And we're able to measure connected communities, which is one piece of civic health, as well as civic participation. And so we have the data nationally and then also here in Arizona.
So you're able at the Center for the Future of Arizona to take a look at the national picture and then compare how Arizona scores in all of these different areas to see if we are leading in some areas or if we are more vulnerable in some areas. How do we rate? What does Arizona's civic health look like?
There is a lot of promising news in our civic health data, and then there's some areas of focus, which won't come as a surprise. In addition to the progress meters, though, I want to make sure people know that we have additional ways that we're measuring. So we're also doing that through listening to Arizonans. So we have data where we can look at indicators that are reported through census and various formats that are curated, and that's important. But so is just listening to Arizonans and talking with them and finding out, what do you care about? what is your current experience and what do you want for the future? So we do that through really robust survey research. So the Gallup Arizona survey, which we conduct every 10 years, which is the most comprehensive, robust survey of its kind in our state, designed and truly is a representative sample of all Arizonans. So every voice matters and counts, as well as our more recent survey research, which is the Arizona Voters Agenda, knowing going into elections, what are the things on people's minds. So we're really able to take all those data sets to be able to have a sense of where we are. So you asked, all right, what does it look like?
Get to the nitty gritty.
Yes. So here's the good news. It is so clear in our research and in our data that Arizonans care about civic health, care about civic engagement, and want a democracy that works for all. That's actually one of our shared public values that we have as Arizonans. And Arizonans want to come together to solve problems. I think that's important to I'm going to share a few more indicators, but go ahead. Yes.
No, but I mean, the fact that it seems that your research says that we want to be actionable in finding the solutions for the betterment of all Arizonans, I think speaks, very highly for our civic health and the opportunity for civic engagement. So I'm encouraged by that.
Mm-hmm.
Keep going.
Okay.
Keep going. Tell me more. Tell me more.
Invite you, pique your curiosity with
please.
a little bit more data. So I have a few data points that I want to share. So on the encouraging signs, 75% of Arizonans have said, I'm willing to come together with people who have different perspectives and views to solve problems. So that's really significant, especially when we hear so much about people being in echo chambers and seeking out people that really only have, their viewpoints.
Similar views.
Right. Our data, and this has been through multiple surveys, suggest otherwise, that people really are willing to come together and have conversations with people with different viewpoints.
So I want to talk about this data, right? Because I feel like what the media says, right, is that we are so far apart on so many things. But what your data is very, very clearly saying is 3 out of 4 Arizonans are willing to come together with our varying viewpoints and find a way forward, that we're willing to meet one another where we're at and find the things that we can agree on so we can have a sustainable future for everyday Arizonans and for all of us, right? And so I feel like some of this is there's kind of this national narrative that we are very far apart and we only want to talk to people that agree with us. And I'm encouraged by the fact that your data says that's actually not where Arizonans are at. We are open to having the uncomfortable conversations. We are comfortable with being uncomfortable and trying to find a path forward. So that is, I think, really relatively good news for us.
Yes, and I am so glad that you dove into this idea of like, what do we often hear in the public? What's that public narrative? There's been a lot of national work lately, really looking at trust in institutions, strength of democracy. How do we continue to build strong civic health? And the Academy of Arts and Sciences has actually been doing some work in this area. And one of the areas of focus that they've identified is building shared narratives. And this idea that we've never been more polarized as a country in recent years than we are right now, than we have been in the last decade. And our research data flies in the face of that and says there are actually things that we all can agree on,
right,
and that we all want. And the importance of telling that story and building that narrative to say we do agree on these things and we can come together and work on those things is really, really important. Because if we don't have hope and a sense of possibility that we can come together,
well, then
we
jig
can't
is up,
have
right? Then the
strong
jig is
civic
up.
health.
Yeah.
So it's so important.
And I think I'm curious in hearing more about your data points, but it seems to me if we can prioritize the things that we agree on, right, it gives us the opportunity to work our muscles that are about compromise and solution, right?
Yes.
And so we're polarized, nationally, that is the narrative that Americans are very far apart on things. Your data says, no, we want to actually come together and have the difficult conversations so that we can find a solution for whatever the issues are to move our great state forward. And it seems to me that if there's a willingness and the ability to do that, then we have the opportunity to build trust. And when we build trust, we build stronger communities, and it allows us to work on additional things that maybe were a little further down on the priority list.
Yes.
Am I understanding this correctly?
No,
It's all connected,
yes,
right?
When you describe that, Angela, I think about a circle,
Yeah.
And that each lever, supports each other in that virtuous cycle. Exactly.
Oh, all right. So there's hope,
yes,
which
so
is
there's
so
hope.
important.
Another data point that people, I think, will find hope in is that 62% of Arizonans want leaders who work across the aisle to solve problems.
So the majority of Arizonans want us to work in a bipartisan fashion.
Yes.
Yes. And we're a very interesting state too, right? Because when we looked at Arizonans who are registered to vote, it's like 35% registration, or registered Republicans rather, 33-ish percent registered independents, 29, 30% Democrats. So we're literally a couple
a third.
So that really does say that it's incumbent upon us to work in a bipartisan fashion. So that, again, is encouraging. But I kind of see what goes on down in our Capitol, and we're not working in a bipartisan fashion, right? So we have a Republican majority in both the House and the Senate. That majority grew a little bit in the November elections, I think by a seat in each chamber. And we have a Democratic governor, right? And so it seems like the majority party in both chambers is on track to do the things they want to do. A Democratic governor that will veto the things that she doesn't think that are good for the state. And then it goes back to the majority party, which then has no problem doing these concurrent resolutions. Clearly, we had 13 ballot initiatives in the November election where it goes to the people, and the vast majority of those ballot initiatives actually failed. So it seems to me we would be better served, and it seems to me what your research is showing, what Arizonans really want, is that for them to figure out how to compromise at our states, at the state level, to get to actually pass bills that are for the betterment of all Arizonans, and to stop acting in like this hyper-partisan way. Because again, the vast majority of the ballot initiatives were rejected, right?
Yep.
And it's just a way. I feel like it wears us down, and it's a waste of taxpayer money. And and then of course, we're 2 years away from midterm, but there's already a concurrent resolution that's been introduced, right? I'm like, wow, I thought we were going to take this year off, and the concurrent resolutions would come in 2026, the year of the midterm election. So I have hope in what Arizonans want. I have concerns with how our elected officials act in a way that is hyperpartisan.
And so do Arizonans. So there's hope in what we want, and there's a disconnect between what we as Arizonans want and what we're getting today in terms of what politics are delivering, what solutions, where the conversation is focused. There's a very clear mismatch. I mean, our survey research cuts across civic engagement, education, immigration, health, housing, all the big issues facing us now and that matter for the long-term future success of the state. And you can look and see there's a disconnect. And when we ask Arizonans, do you think that your elected leaders represent you and your views and interests, the majority of Arizonans say no. So that has led us at CFA to say, okay, well, what's going on? What is contributing to that? And this again ties back to civic health. Civic health is both about the systems and the structures, and it's also about the culture, the civic culture. And it's both of those that have to work hand in hand in order to enable the solution building that's responsive to what people want. And so in Arizona, and this was one of the ballot initiatives, CFA was really proud to support and endorse Prop 140, make elections fair, to be able to reimagine the primary system. Because what I would encourage listeners and viewers to do is get curious about why are we getting the results we're getting? And is there anything to be done about that? And that led us at CFA to say, okay, well, let's look at the system we have. And what we've learned, and there are many folks working on this in Arizona, is that our primary system leading up to the general election is actually where some of the most important decisions happen.
And it's where we have the least amount of voter engagement.
Exactly. But we don't have to just accept that. Those are things in our system that we can actually change.
Work to fix.
Right.
So I personally was very supportive of Prop 140. I'm a registered independent. I've been a registered independent since I was 18. I'm so glad to see that I'm in fashion and that a third of Arizonans are with me because I am a very complex human being. And so I like to say that I'm fiscally conservative and socially normal, right? Like I believe in equal treatment for all people. That is obviously inclusive of LGBTQ plus Arizonans and Americans. I think that we deserve equal treatment and policy that treats us equally under the law. The fact that we live in a state where it's not illegal to discriminate against a person based on their sexual orientation or gender identity in over half of our state based on population and in over 85% of our state based on landmass says that we have work that we need to do together. I'm also a big believer that equal treatment is and treating people fairly is a nonpartisan issue. I think it's when we treat all of our citizens fairly, we are creating a better Arizona for all of us, right? But back to 140, it's so fascinating to me. And so number one, I know that a lot of registered independents don't even think that they can vote in the primary. I also know that voter engagement in primaries is remarkably low in the state. And then to your point, so many of the big decisions are made because we have gerrymandering in our districts, right? And so our districts, we only have a few competitive districts, right. and the rest of our districts are either what are called like safe Democratic districts or safe Republican districts, meaning whoever wins the primary in that district, if it's a Democratic leaning district, that person is likely going to go on and be the not just a candidate, but the next person elected to whatever seat they're running for. If it is a center right seat that is a safe center right seat, whoever wins that primary. And I feel like it's incumbent upon all of us. I'm so glad that we're having this conversation and that the Center for the Future of Arizona supported Prop 140 because we need to be having these conversations now so that these really encouraging signs of 75% of Arizonans wanting to have the difficult conversations and find the things we can agree on so we can move forward. And these things that are giving your research hope can actually be achieved because there's this huge disconnect right now, right? And, depending on where you live, you don't feel like you have access to your elected representatives. I feel sometimes elected representatives don't understand that they actually work for the people. It seems like they can be very difficult to get to sometimes. And so that's not encouraging to everyday Arizonans. And so it's creating this tension, right? And what else is it creating? Like it's not giving us the opportunity to get to the solutions that we so richly deserve, right?
Right. And that we need.
Yeah.
We're at an inflection point. We have big issues facing our state, and we need elected leaders who are leading and focusing on the priorities that Arizonans consistently say matter. But we have to have the system and the infrastructure that enables that.
And it works in a functional manner
in that
right?
way.
And so I think what I'm hearing is it's time we reconfigure that infrastructure in a way that is more accessible. And when I was getting educated on Prop 140, what I heard was it didn't mean that people would be less partisan, but it meant that they would be more solutions based, because if you have to talk to everyone in your district, not just whoever your base is, and everyone's votes matter because you have more access to the ballot, right?
Right.
And those independents that don't know that they can run have access. And also the thing with the open primary, the Prop 140 is everyone's listed, right? So you're not just you're only seeing if you're a registered Republican, you're only voting for the Republican. If you're a registered Democrat, you're only voting for the Democrat. And this was one of the points that was brought up when because I had Kimber Lanning and Adam Goodman on to talk about Prop 140. And one of the things that Adam brought up, I think, was, independents pay for primaries, but we don't have equal access to
Right.
primaries. And so making these systems more fair in how they operate so that we are having actual outcomes that are the outcomes that the majority of Arizonans, according to your research, really want.
Right.
Like
And-
that's the way forward.
And we're modeling civic health right now, Angela, because we're having a conversation together about the issue to explore what's really going on and then talking about where change can happen. And that's exactly what needs to continue.
I'm so happy that we're having
Yes,
a
yes.
good civic healthy conversation.
Yes. We're modeling it for everyone right here.
So what else does your research show? What are the top priorities? What matters to Arizonans?
Well, what we know about top issues there are 7 shared public values that Arizonans have. So Arizonans want a strong, excellent, equitable education system that delivers on the promise for every child. Arizonans understand that a strong and educated Arizona is good for people and it's good for the future success of the state. Arizonans want clean, sustainable futures. We have a beautiful state. Arizonans want to ensure that beauty and that we can continue to live here and thrive for a long time. So I would love to invite people to dig into our survey research and learn more about where those areas of agreement are. Going back to our indicators around connected communities and civic engagement, polarization is an issue. 91% of Arizonans see that polarization is a problem, and they're concerned about it, and they're concerned about division. So I don't want to skirt that issue because that is real, and people are feeling that today.
But there's a connectivity to the 91% who see the polarization and have concern about it, and the 75% of Arizonans who say they are willing to sit down and have good, healthy civic engagement with people that have diverse and different viewpoints of theirs. So we see, I feel like your survey is calling out the issue of polarization, but is also calling out the promise of a way forward, which is for us as Arizonans to meet people where they're at and not see opposition, but rather opportunity to engage with one another so that we can have a healthier Arizona for all of us.
Yes. Yes.
So there is some encouragement.
Right. And we've thought a lot about polarization at Center for the Future of Arizona, and I think it's really important that we don't just accept it, because we've done the Gallup Arizona survey 2 times, so reflecting 20 years of insights of Arizona voters' agenda, and the findings are so consistent that we do agree on far more than we disagree, which means that we can't be polarized on everything. And so I think we really need to take back that narrative and point people to the information and the data and start to have those constructive conversations versus feeling hopeless and that nothing can be done.
Right.
So I'm so grateful that you've invited us to be able to share these data and insights and hopefully help promote that.
Anytime you want to have these conversations, and I want to end with a birthday wish.
Okay.
Because we are fast approaching, Arizona Statehood Day on Valentine's Day, which is also my anniversary. So to my lovely wife, happy anniversary, darling. What is your birthday wish for Arizona?
Well, I started out by saying that I love that we're writing our story still together in Arizona. And so I think this idea that the future is ours to build. And so my wish for Arizona is that Arizonans see that stake in the future, that they have, and that as Arizonans, we take those steps to have conversations with one another, to seek out trusted information, to build with one another in community, because it's all of those small steps together that add up and ultimately create that strong civic health that's going to ultimately enable us to realize this idea of the Arizona we want. So that's my birthday wish for Arizona in this 113th year.
Well, Amanda, I hope that your birthday wish for our great state comes true. I am so grateful for this conversation and look forward to having you on again soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.